First Class Fatherhood. That is where Alec Lace comes in with his popular podcast.
And one of the most interesting was on a podcast.
Alec Lace interviews high-profile fathers from actors to NFL players with a vision to change the narrative of fatherhood and family life.
It's an honor to have Father Frank Pavone here on First Class Fatherhood. Thank you for joining me on the podcast.
Great to be with you, Alec. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I usually start this off. I'm always interviewing dads on the podcast here. I am a Catholic myself. The family unit and the breakdown of the family unit in this country is very near and dear to my heart. So I want to get your take on that, on abortion, and a few other things. But before we get into that, if you could, please take a second to hit my listeners with a little bit about your background.
Yes, well, I am the director of several pro-life organizations. I got involved in the pro-life movement back in 1976. And it was that same time that I felt a call to the priesthood. So I began to do pro-life activities, got ordained in 1988, started working full-time in the pro-life movement in 1993, heading up this group called Priests for Life. And ever since then, we've built it into one of the largest pro-life ministries in the world and have been just so blessed to be able to interact with people on every level in the world of government and in the world of pro-life and in the church and in just across America, working to defend the unborn. We do a lot of broadcasting, publishing, seminars, traveling, speaking, and just praying with people to bring an end to abortion. That's who I am and what I do.
Yeah, I really love what you do. I'm a big fan of you and what you brought to the pro-life movement. Now, for me, as far as being number one, an American, number two, just a family man, a man of God, all this stuff. I know growing up, it was always said that politics and religion is something you never talk about. Keep that stuff out of the discussion. But it seems like today, almost every single issue has become political. There's no way around it. It seems like no matter where your opinions lie, there's a political side to it. And it's become very more difficult to even have a conversation without it somehow veering off into the path of politics, which then becomes like a chaotic conversation. And there's no doubt about that. But 2 points here. One, as an American, very, very concerned about the direction my country is headed. And number two, as a Catholic, very concerned about the way my Catholic church is headed. So I kind of wanted to get your opinion on this. It seems as though the Catholic Church has been a kind of quiet about abortion, especially what's happened to you, obviously being defrocked by the Catholic Church for speaking out about abortion. Is this something that's going on in the Catholic Church? Are you the only one of the pro-life priests that's been targeted like this? Is this something that's going on within the Catholic Church? And when did you give the listeners a little bit about how you would defrock the whole bit?
Well, there is a division within the church, just like there's a division within the nation. And, the divisions are no longer what they used to be, where, like, for example, in religion, you would have, the Anglicans over here, Presbyterians, Catholics, etc. The divisions now are more horizontal. And what I mean is that, you and I as Catholics may have more in common with our Baptist next door neighbor than we do with our parish priest. And because the division is around the basics, like, do we really believe in the Word of God? Do we apply it practically? Do we let it shape our politics? Are we seeing the abortion problem for what it is and giving it the emphasis that it deserves? I've been giving this message in the Catholic community for the last 30 years, as we briefly mentioned, and I've been urging the church to do more about abortion and, frankly, to do more about politics, to increase our comfort level with that discussion you just referred to about religion and politics. They do mix. We do need to talk about them. And for all of these reasons, many in the church have become uncomfortable with me and with the message my organization gives. And it's not just me. There are millions of people that support us. And so they've gotten nervous, and they've tried in various ways over the years. This is not just a recent development, but some bishops have tried over the years to silence my message or to tone it down or to, get me to do something else, and that hasn't worked. None of their efforts have worked. So that's why they took the drastic step recently of saying to me, you can no longer be a priest. Well, the problem is that's not going to stop our message, and it's not going to stop people from supporting our message, as our interview here indicates very clearly, and thank you for your support. the church has to face up to what's going on here. We're not any longer just talking about simply policy differences when it comes to politics. We're talking about differences on the level of principle. In other words, two candidates might have different ideas about how to reduce crime, right? But the disagreement is not going to be about whether we should reduce crime. You're not going to see a candidate campaigning for the right to crime, although some of the things that have happened lately make you wonder even if we're heading that way. But the point is that's on the level of principle. What are the things that we all agree on as fundamental, self-evident truths, to borrow a phrase from the Declaration of Independence, that there is a right to life, that we do have to have freedom. We're facing attacks on those basic principles. And my position is, and I'm sure the position of many in our audience, is that you can't be neutral when it comes to that. You can't be neutral when it comes to the defense of life, the defense of freedom. I share your concern for the country because we have people in certain leadership positions who don't seem to care about those very fundamental principles. And when we reach that point, we have all got to speak up boldly and clearly.
There's no doubt about it, Father. And also, too, you look at the other side of this, the pro-choice, they're not backing down. They're going all in. And it has gotten so difficult to even have a conversation, like a cordial conversation about this, because it goes to the extreme so quickly. You could start the conversation at 10 miles an hour. Before you know it, you're on the Autobahn. I mean, it goes lightning fast. And the other side also, too, what really bothers me about the conversations or about this entire debate is when you see, like a few years ago, New York City lit up the Freedom Tower in pink in honor of their late-term abortion law, that they late-term. And we just, even with this thing that has recently passed where you don't even give support to a child that survives the abortion attempt, and people that are for that. And then you also see these pro-choice people that are not only just fighting for their point of view, but they're out there with fake dolls that are covered in blood, like they're spiking a football, and they're so proud of their abortions, and they're like championing it. And it's kind of sickening to see that it's gotten so extreme on that side. It's one thing to have these kind of conversations in a heart-to-heart, but one thing to be like I said, celebrating and spiking the football that you're ending a life. I think it's gotten so radical from the other side. And if the pro-life movement doesn't step up to meet that type of intensity, then why even play the game?
You pointed out something that shows how bad things have become. And there was just a vote the other day. I was there in Congress when this happened, a vote on expanding protection for babies who actually survive abortions, because that sometimes happens, especially with these late-term procedures, which are more like deliveries. The babies will survive. So if you have a baby on the table there in the procedure room who is outside the mother's body and breathing on his or her own, can you kill that baby? And that's what this law that was voted on, it was passed by the House of Representatives to expand protections for these babies. The Republicans have been trying to get it passed for years and years. The Democrats have opposed it. There was only one Democrat in the more than 200 of them in the House of Representatives that voted to expand protections for such babies. I mean, this is insanity. It's just insanity. And this is where, to help the conversations about political things, which I want to urge our audience, don't be afraid of those conversations, but at the same time, try to take an approach that would tamper down the venom or the agitation. And one of the ways you can do that is to ask questions in a very calm way and to try to get down to people's experience. For example, when it comes to this question of babies born alive, many folks on the other side will just jump to saying, well, you're making this up, and right away, I mean, that can escalate a conversation because it's like, you're accusing me of lying. I'm trying to converse with you about something important. Why are you saying I'm making it up? But if everyone could have at their fingertips just a little bit of information, it could calm things down. Because, for example, the website bornalive.us has, and this is one of the websites our ministry has created, it has the basic facts, because there are states that keep track of this. There are federal statistics on this, babies that are born alive after a failed abortion. People want to say, oh, this doesn't happen. It does. But if you have that information at your fingertips, simple website, bornalive.us, you can say to people in a very calm way, listen, you may disagree with me on this. I understand it's a volatile topic. Take a moment, check out that website, see for yourself that this is really happening, and then we can come back and have a rational conversation. Or to point out something that happened just yesterday. We were in Washington, D.C. I was also in San Francisco for the Walk for Life. And at both of these events, the March for Life and the Walk for Life, I led the gathering of the Silent No More campaign, another project of our ministry where those who've had abortions speak out about their experience. So if you're talking with somebody and it gets volatile, you're talking about abortion, and it's like, you say to them, well, have you listened to those who have actually done it? I mean, it's one thing to argue about opinions, but there's experience here. And people who've had abortions, could we listen to their voices and ask, did it help them? Are they saying it was good? Did it fulfill its promises? Or did it cause more problems? And when you listen to these voices of testimony, you realize, yeah, it causes more problems. That's where it also connects with your theme of about fathers, because we have fathers sharing their experiences of losing a child to abortion. And these men are devastated by that. And there's a lot of suffering going on among these fathers because of the lie of abortion.
There's no doubt about it, Father. And my wife and I, we went through several miscarriages. And so that experience, we have 4 children we're blessed with, but we had, like I said, we went through several miscarriages, and just that process alone is very devastating. And yes. So and plus fathers are kind of pushed out of this whole conversation when it comes to abortion so many times, as if they have no say whatsoever in what happens with the child. But it seems like overwhelmingly, it seems like this issue is about where everybody points to the extreme. Someone is raped, someone has incest, or the mother is going to die on the table unless they abort the kid. Like, they go to those 3 extremes when you're having this conversation. And I would obviously that's a very small minority, but there are cases where that does happen.
Sure.
But I would argue that the overwhelming majority of these it's a conversation about being able to have sex without having any responsibility for having the sex. And our culture is pushing sexual images, pornography. They are making it so inviting for you to just have sex with no responsibility. And it seems like you're taking away my right to have a good time and making me have to pay the price for my good time. Seems to be the overwhelming majority of abortion cases. But these ones come up: the rape, the incest, the mother dying. Could you address those 3 issues as it pertains to the pro-life movement and their view on it?
Well, yes, we have the greatest compassion, of course, for people who have been victims of rape or incest, and also, of course, for those who have medically complicated pregnancies, which, of course, arise with regularity in our society. But in none of those cases is that problem solved by killing the baby. In cases of rape, we have many people in our campaign. I was just last night with the leader of an entire group of people who were conceived in rape. And they make it clear, and the studies that have been done show, that women who have been raped, they're not looking for abortion as much as people around them are suggesting it to them. They're looking for help for themselves and for their child. If you abort that baby, first of all, of course, people will say, hey, wait a minute, the baby didn't do anything wrong, and that's true. But I would start even with a different thought, which is it going to help that mother? Does the abortion unrape her? Or does the abortion bring its own trauma that compounds the pain she already has from the rape? That indeed, again, looking at experience, not just at arguments, that again is what we find to be the case. The abortion doesn't help her. So we want to help her. We should all have even more compassion for the victims of sexual assault. But friends, we just got to face the facts. It's not an abortion that helps her. Let's help her with really life-giving solutions that will help both her and her baby. As far as medically complicated pregnancies, again, I interact with doctors and medical experts for whom this is their field of specialty, medically complicated pregnancies. And they always, first of all, in medicine, they understand you have 2 patients here. You have that mother, you have that baby. You got to care for both patients. You can't kill one in order to help the other. But the good news is, medically speaking, you don't have to kill anybody. The baby can be delivered early. You do everything you can to help both the baby and the mother. But the complications of pregnancy do not require, you don't jump right away to the killing of the baby as a solution. They do not require that. They require extra care for that pregnant mom. And then, of course, early delivery of the child with the most help being given to have the child survive as well. That's the good news in these cases. And so be aware, brothers and sisters, not to let people just automatically jump to abortion as a solution. You got to consider all these facts first.
Yeah, right on with that. I love what you have to say there. And especially when it pertains to rape, it seems as though everyone takes it out on the unborn baby and nobody takes it out on the rapist. We allow the rapist right back out onto the street to do this again. And God forbid we lock the guy up for life. That's off the question, you know. So they're usually, I think the average is like 11 years for a convicted rapist that does time. And then he's back out into the street. So something needs to be done about that as well, I would argue. But it does seem like, I will say this, as a Catholic, I was a little bit disappointed when the Roe versus Wade overturned decision came out. I really expected so much more from the Catholic Church in a sense of, hey, this fight has been going on for years. It's like we finally had a victory. And there was no celebration. It's like in the Super Bowl, your team scores a touchdown and nobody stands up and applauds. It was so crazy. I didn't hear what I was expecting to hear, and I know that it's been a fight for so long. And why was the Catholic Church kind of so toned down on the Roe versus Wade when that happened, where you think they'd be out there at first celebrating?
This was a very strange thing. And it goes to why a ministry like ours, Priests for Life, exists, because people say, well, Father Frank, isn't every priest for life? And I say, well, we just helped them to say so. And what you're saying goes right to that point. It's like, yeah, we know we're pro-life. The teaching of the church is clear. The goal of the church has been clear. Get rid of Roe v. Wade so that we can protect these babies. And yet, who was saying it when it actually happened? Too much silence. And now the silence has a lot of different causes. I think that, we know from consulting with priests over these decades and helping them, that many of them are just afraid of controversy. They think that they're going to appear political. Unfortunately, many times they are told by their diocese or their religious superior, bishop or whatever, they're told, hey, listen, don't talk about anything that's going to divide the people or make them angry. And everybody knows, as you started off by explaining, very often these conversations about abortion make people angry. But that doesn't take away the responsibility of the church to address the issue. And we see, however, many of these clergy falling into that trap of fear. I'm afraid, I don't want to get people angry, I don't want the backlash. And then we end up not being who we're called to be as a church, a compassionate, clear, courageous voice for life. We certainly, not only in Priests for Life, but in the partnership that I have with the national pro-life leaders, we are all of us together, and we just did this, of course, in the March for Life, are celebrating this great victory, and we have to understand the victory. We have to understand what the court did, and then build on it to advance the protection of the unborn. So, friends, if you hear nothing but silence from the pulpit about abortion, I just want to encourage our audience, speak to your pastors and say, in a very kind and humble way, say, hey, we need to hear more about this issue. We need to be encouraged in the pro-life battle.
Yeah, because there's no doubt that when there is a victory of some significance on the other side, on the pro-choice movement, you do hear from them. They are not silent. They're out painting the town. I mean, there's no doubt about that. So it's very discouraging. And I know, obviously, Donald Trump it's become such a magnetic figure, and it makes people mad by just saying the name. I had his son Eric on the show here a few times. I got a lot of backlash just for having him on. Nothing about the discussion that we had, but just the name alone drives people bananas. For some reason. Now, obviously, you can disagree with him on many cases, but when it comes to this, he's the only president that I know of that actually marched in the March for Life as a president of the United States. And then you have a guy and he's not even Catholic. And you have somebody, Joe Biden, who is Catholic, who now is pro-choice. So you would think just from that, you don't have to agree with everything else they stand for, but on that point, you would have to try to give some respect to the fact that what Trump has done for the pro-life movement. But it seems like even in that, people are afraid to even give him props for what he did for that.
Well, Alec, I want to back up what you just said, because as someone who's been a full-time national pro-life leader for 30 years And I worked hard for George W. Bush for his election. We worked with his administration. We were with him when he signed pro-life bills. And we're grateful for the pro-life leadership that he gave. But no president has done more for the pro-life cause than Donald J. Trump. And we've been at his side for all the things he has done. Everything within his power he has done for these babies and for this movement. We wouldn't have had the victory over Roe v. Wade without President Trump. And the thing for people to realize is that this is something that he does out of sincere conviction. And it's something that he does which enjoys the support of the American people. The American people don't want unrestricted abortion. What we have to see about people like you mentioned about Biden, who claims to be a Catholic, it's not just being, we should allow abortion. Okay, a lot of Americans feel that way. They wouldn't do it themselves. They even think it's bad, but they think, it should be allowed, and therefore they call themselves pro-choice. But what we're seeing in Biden and Pelosi and the Democrat Party generally is way worse than that. They are pushing for more and more abortion at every turn. They are looking for more and more money to go into the abortion industry. They are working to take away even the most modest restrictions on abortion and even protections, like we said before, for babies who survive abortion. This is crazy. The American people have never agreed with this. Never. You never see any statistics that say Americans want abortions to be legal in the 6th, 7th, and 8th month of pregnancy. It's just not where we've ever been. And yet these people, if you ask Biden, Pelosi, would you be in favor of a law that stops abortions after the 5th month, let's say? They won't give you a clear answer. They're not, because they're not in favor of that. And it's like, wow, these people are not just allowing abortion. They're apostles of abortion. They're pushing for it. And that's very, very evil.
It's sickening to see. It really is. And I know that the argument, too, is so many people have to believe that it's not a life. That's obviously the big push from that side, because if they do believe it's a life, then it's murder. So for them, they have to continue with the front of this is not a life. And they go with that argument. I know that the rapper there, Tom McDonald, recently had a song that came out where he points out if they find like a little speck of bacteria on Mars, the headlines, life on Mars.
That's
right.
A
heartbeat in a baby is not life on Earth. And it's very, very mind-boggling to hear, those arguments. And I wanted to get your take on Pope Francis, just because for myself as a Catholic, I'm not a fan of him at all. I don't like what he's done for the Catholic Church. I think as a Catholic, just like as an American, we have the right to criticize our president. As a Catholic, we have the right to criticize our Pope. And even little things like how he didn't want any more. The thing he said about Latin masses and wanted to pull back on Latin masses. Like that's one thing I wish they would bring back more of, that tradition of the Latin masses. But just things with him really irked me. And I kind of wanted to get your take. What's your opinion here on Pope Francis?
I get so much reaction of exactly what you just said. Millions and tens of millions of Catholics are feeling the very same thing, and I'm disturbed by it as well. I've actually had some good interactions with him face to face. I've talked with him, 4 or 5 times over the years, and he's encouraged my work and my ministry, especially with the healing of the wounds of abortion. But for reasons that I really don't understand, there are so many things that come out from his office and things that he says that are confusing to people, and things that he does that are just confusing to people. So I always say this: look, it's okay, as you rightly said, and Pope Francis himself agrees. Hey, you can criticize things I do or say. That's it's part of just being human. Being mature. We express our disagreements. But when you feel confused by something that the Pope says, or maybe something that your pastor says, it's okay to be confused about something that they say. We never have to be confused about what the faith says. And that's, I think, the solution to all of this. Every pontificate is temporary. Popes come, popes go. We've been spoiled in our lifetime. We've lived under saints as popes. John the 23rd, Paul the 6th, John Paul II. These are saints. So the thing to focus on, 6 little words: what the church has always taught. If we focus on those 6 words, we can navigate through any storm. The Pope can say confusing things, do things that don't seem to be right. God will judge all of us, including the Pope. Let's just stay focused on what the church has always taught. Let's make sure we're passing that on to our children and grandchildren and encouraging our fellow believers in that faith and living it out to the best of our ability, and then we'll be just fine.
Amen. Yeah, I love that. And it does. Sometimes I wonder, too, just like I do when we know Biden is tweeting on Twitter, we know it ain't him that's writing these tweets that are coming out. It's just like I wonder sometimes with the Vatican, who's actually putting together some of these things.
Well, and you know, Alec, they should be transparent about that, right?
Right.
Tell us. I think transparency goes a long way in resolving a lot of these problems. Because in a lot of my own conflicts with people in the hierarchy, I have found just this opaqueness, this lack of transparency, this lack of willingness to just be open. I'm an open book. You know, I do a daily diary online. I tell people what I did every single day from the moment I get up to the moment I went to bed, go to bed, because I think for a person in my position, public leadership, a lot of people supporting the ministry, I think it's incumbent on us to be as transparent as we can. I'd like to see a little more transparency from these religious leaders, just like I'd like to see from our political leaders. And that's one of the great things, going back to President Trump, you always knew where he stood. You might not agree with it, but you knew where he stood. You knew how he felt, and you knew it immediately, you know, with his tweets and everything. I didn't have any problem with the tweets. I say, hey, this is the most transparent administration that we've ever had. Transparency goes a long way, and it's very consistent with the gospel, too. You know, God wants us to be, you know, let your yes be yes and your no be no, right? There shouldn't be stuff that you're hiding, you know, that you don't want people to know about. Let's just be open. We know we're all sinners. We know we're all imperfect. We correct one another. That's why it's good we disagree with one another. We can help each other improve. And I think that's the way forward.
Yeah, come to me hot or come to me cold. Don't come to me lukewarm. I spit you out, right? I agree. And transitioning this into the family here, Father, if we could. Now, one of the things, obviously, with the abortion is, man, could we get to a place where we don't have to have so many millions of abortions and put these women in these positions to have to make a decision in the first place? And a lot of that comes from the home. A lot of that comes from your upbringing. And a high percentage of teenage pregnancies are coming from girls that grow up with no father in the home. It affects their menstrual cycle. It affects so many things on a biological level and a psychological level for the young women and also for the young men who then turn to violence. Our prison systems are filling up in this country primarily with one specific characteristic, and that is a young man from a fatherless household. And so I think if we have to do something, now I know that the divorces are sky high. I don't know how serious people are taking pre-Cana anymore when they're going through these process before they get married. But I think it's more important about the party and about who the DJ is going to be and what the dances are, rather than what are they going to do together and seeing their future together and answering some of these questions. So I wanted to get your take on the fatherless crisis in this country and how we can solve it.
It is at the root of so many problems. I see it in the work I do and any other issue too. Breakdown of the family. The family is the cell of society. If you have healthy families, you're going to have a healthier society. If you have families that are falling apart, and we talk about evangelizing the family. Well, to evangelize the family, you got to find the family. Where did it go? And the absence of fathers is a fundamental aspect of the breakdown of the family. Therefore, the breakdown of the culture, the breakdown of society, and all these other problems that occur. God's word, if you look at it you can look at it from the scientific aspect, statistically. At the root of so many psychological and social problems, absence of fathers. You look at it biblically and spiritually, you see the same thing. God is our Father. And in Scripture, it's just not about acknowledging him as the father of the whole human family. It's about acknowledging that all fatherhood comes from him. And so the biblical truth that God is our Father is also an exhortation and a command to be fathers. So whether it's in the family, that's of course where it starts. Be present, be strong, be loving, be faithful. This is the God's command to fathers. But then we need fathers in the pulpits. We were just talking about our church leaders. They need to be men. They need to be fathers. They need to be strong. They need to do for the spiritual community what a natural father does for his physical family. The same kind of virtues are necessary. And, we always say if a young man wants to become a priest, we always look out for, what is his attitude towards marriage? And if he says something like, oh, well, I could never do that, there's too much sacrifice involved in that. Well, then I said, well, then you wouldn't make a good priest either. You have to, the best priests would be the people who make the best fathers. So we need fatherhood in the church. We need fatherhood in the political arena. We can't have wimps up there trying to lead a nation. You don't lead a nation without the virtues of a father. The love, the compassion, the courage, the clarity, the decisiveness, the strength. Okay, so we have all these problems. Applying it to the issue that I'm most familiar with, abortion, we were talking before about why is this? It's so easy for people to get abortions because these women feel so isolated. The men, now, whether they're married or not, or whether marriage is the best thing going forward or not, that's an open question because in many of these cases, the two who conceived the child really should not be together, should not be married. Let's put that question aside. But just the role of the man there, who is physically, biologically, the father of that child that's been conceived, they so often make a mistake of thinking that the best thing for them to say to that woman is, oh, it's your choice. I'm respecting your choice. Hands off, step away. I'm not going to interfere. I'm not going to force you what to do. The guy might think that that's the best approach, but think of it from the woman's perspective. What that does, it makes her feel more isolated. Oh, you're putting this burden. Oh, now it's just on me. It's just on my shoulder. Life or death to this child. Now you're just leaving me alone to make the decision. How about instead, these young men learn to step up to the plate and to say, listen, we did this together. I'm going to stick with you and with this baby. We're going to see this through. We're going to get the help we need. That doesn't mean necessarily that we're meant to be together, but it means there's a life here now that we're both responsible for. I'm not going to run away. I'm not going to abandon you. That's what these men have to be able to say. And that goes to the core of this fatherless problem, because at the core, whether you're talking about an abortion situation or any of the other social situations, the fork in the road for these men, for these fathers, is the difference between faithful presence and abandonment. Am I going to stick with the people that God put right in front of me, or am I going off on my own? That's the fork in the road. That translates then specifically into hundreds of different issues. But I think we can identify it right there. And ultimately, again, putting it in more spiritual terms, it's the call to respond to the vocation of love. Love, such a misused and abused word, but it's basically about self-giving, self-sacrifice. I have a person in front of me right now. Either I'm going to love them, I'm going to sacrifice myself for the good of the other person, or I'm going to abandon them. I'm going to sacrifice them for my own good. That's the opposite of love. This is what makes real men, real fathers, to make that choice of love.
Really great stuff, Father. And we are in an epidemic right now when it comes to fatherhood, when it comes to men in general. Men have been just crippled in this country, and it's really hurting our society, hurting our family units. And when that family unit is broken apart, everything else falls by the ways. You just throughout history, where you see the fall of empires, you always see, you can make even the arguments for Rome. You can have 3, 4, 5 reasons for the invasion of the barbarians, the whole bit, but you can't even have that conversation without, at the core, the family fell apart. And it just seems like it's happening here in this country, and it's happening at a very alarming rate.
It is. And, Alec, to bring up one more thing about that, it's falling apart. You're on to it, and I just want to thank you for the work that you do, because putting the spotlight on this it's essential for saving America. It's essential for the salvation of souls. It's essential for everything. But we don't only see it falling apart, we see it under deliberate attack. And this is what's so crazy, going back to we were talking before about politics and being politically neutral. We can't be neutral when the family's under attack. But it is under attack, and we see what the Democrat Party is doing, and we see movements like Black Lives Matter. Oh, it sounds so nice, and yet when you look at what their core beliefs are, you see that attack on the nuclear family. We've got to expose what's going on here, and the policies, the kind of laws they want to pass, the kind of judges they want to put on the courts. The left, the radical left, which has taken control of the Democrat Party, is just abandoning any notion of family. Family is, whatever you want it to be. We've even gotten to the point where we can't say a man is a man or a woman is a woman. And, Alec, I say maybe we've gotten to that point because for 50 years we've been saying a baby's not a baby. That's the break with reality. If you can't acknowledge the validity of the biological truth of who you are, male or female, you can't acknowledge the biological truth of who that baby is. That's a human being in the womb. So we see this outright attack. It's a vigorous attack. It's an attack by people who have a lot of resources, and they're aiming those resources at destroying what we believe in. So the restoration of this, the restoration of fatherhood, the restoration of the family, among other things, requires a battle-ready mindset. Some people don't like to talk about culture wars or the whole terminology and analogy of war is unpleasant to people. But in a sense, for those who use it, that's the point, to show how indeed unpleasant it is. We're not trying to make it a fun thing. We're trying to point out that there's a real problem here. This is a war, and we've got to have a battle-ready mindset that we're going to go in. We got to aggressively defend what we believe in terms of the family, and aggressively defend it including in the realm of politics and in the realm of all the other things that we do. Ultimately, I think the best defense is this: living it. When we have strong families, and we've got a lot of strong families out there, we've got a lot of heroic fathers. I meet them all the time. I'm sure you meet them all the time. And it's like, put them on the pedestal. Let your light shine, as the Bible says. Showcase, give the testimonies, tell the world the joy you have in living out that vocation of love, that self-giving generosity, that strength. We flourish with that. Let's encourage, and also let's shine the light on these beautiful, strong families, these wonderful, loving fathers who are all around us. They need not only our encouragement, but part of this battle is to let their light overcome the darkness of those who are being unfaithful and those who are attacking these things we believe in.
Yeah, very well said. And this is the whole mission that I'm on here, Father. The guys that I've had on this show, people know them as Academy Award winners, Super Bowl MVPs, Navy SEALs. But who they really are at the core are fathers. And that's what they're most proud of in their life. And here on this show, they get an opportunity to talk about what's really, truly important to them. These are guys that wouldn't go on normal podcasts because they're talking about the same old thing. But when they get the opportunity to speak about fatherhood, they light up, because it's really, truly at their core what really gives them fulfillment in life. And we need to start showcasing that. They're more than just entertainers or celebrities or people we look up to, and we're looking up to them for the wrong reasons. We need to start, and we need to get them on that platform to speak the truth about how they really feel about fatherhood. Because if you wanted to destroy a nation, if the enemies of our country were all together in a room and they were plotting out the destruction of our country, destroying the nuclear family would be one of the top things they would talk about. How do we break their families apart? Because once you do that, you've got free reign to do whatever else you want. And if they all got together and they got the best plot to destroy our country, what would happen is what you're seeing happen right now and taking place before our eyes.
Exactly. That's exactly right. God bless you for doing that, and all those men that come on your program.
Well, last thing I want to veer it here too. Last thing I'll touch on is the future of the Catholic Church here. Where do you? You mentioned before young men that want to become priests. Hey, would you make a good husband? Would you make a good father? It seems like the Catholic Church is losing the interest from young men wanting to enter into the vocation of the priesthood, and it seems to be an alarm. I remember, my father was born in 1930, had me when he was 50 years old. My mother and father came from a much older school than most of the people I grew up with, and back then, when they were growing up, if a child in the family was going to become a priest, it was a big celebration. It was an honor for that family that had a child that was becoming a priest. It was looked at much differently than it's looked at today. So I just kind of wanted to get your take on what are the challenges right now facing the Catholic Church, and where do you see it moving forward?
Well, we have to constantly be focused on Jesus Christ. You know, sometimes when an institution gets very big and it's a religious institution, the temptation is to focus more on the institutional things than on the person who got it started in the first place. And in this case, it's Jesus Christ himself, who's alive, with whom we can have a relationship. And the church can only grow when the church is constantly pointing to him and actually living the life that he offers to us all. As a result of that, people who are going to see the faith that abides within the Christian community, and that's what will attract them to be a priest. You can't have a sincere desire to enter into that kind of a life without a deep faith. And they also have to see, you know, I say to various dioceses where they have these vocation programs. Oh, let's do a project to try to get more guys interested in the priesthood. Well, one of the things you have to make sure those young men are seeing is that you're treating well the priests you already have. Otherwise, why are they going to want to join that group? But ultimately, it does come down to the same thing we were just discussing, that when there's strong faith, there's going to be strong families. And then that shines a light that people are going to be attracted to. And that's why we want people then to come to church, not because of some gimmick or slick advertising campaign, but because they see that people living the faith have something that they want. That we need to make people look at us and say, wow, that those people gathering there for those worship services, look how joyful they are. Look how generous they are. Look how faithful they are. I want some of that. Look, they're strong when sorrow or tragedy afflicts them. They still remain strong. They still remain good people. I want some of that. And this is the future of the church. We're in a rough spot right now because there's so much of a loss of that. But ultimately, within the church, there are many movements. And, aside from don't just look at, the parishes, the dioceses, the structures of the church. Look at the movements within the church. There are many great movements. The pro-life movement is one of them, although it transcends the boundaries just of the Catholic Church. But movements are where I think today we see some of the most vibrant life of faith, and people are coming and they're attracted to it. And these movements have different missions. For some of us, it's defending the unborn. Others, it's going to be feeding the poor, building homes for the homeless, and all these various good works that are out there. Find the faith there, be attracted to it, and latch onto it there, and always focus, like we said before, what the church has always taught, what the church has always lived. That's what's going to sustain us going into the future.
Yeah, great stuff, Father. And the last thing I want to hit you with here, I always ask everybody they get on the podcast here, what type of advice do you have for the new parent that's out there, or for that about to be parent that's out there listening?
The new parent, wow, what a privilege to be able to cooperate with God himself in bringing about new life. There is nothing like that. There is nothing more wondrous, and just never lose your sense of awe. There are going to be many burdens. There are going to be many challenges. There are going to be many days and nights when you're exhausted. You already know that if you're a new parent. In the midst of it all, every day, ask God and ask yourself, give me that sense of awe and wonder, that sense of joy and reverence, that sense of, oh my goodness, there is something here I don't deserve. This is bigger than I am. I can't do this without God. But what a joy this is. That sense of awe and reverence will keep you going. And finally, remember this, that when you were married, you were not the only one that made vows. Whatever promises you made to the mother or to the father of that child, it wasn't just you making promises. God was making a promise. And the promise he made was that every day of your life, every moment of your parenting, he would be there to give you the strength to do what you have to do and endure what you have to endure. Draw on that promise. Keep God faithful to that promise. Go, because he will be. Go to him and cash in, so to speak, on that promise. Through prayer, take his hand in every situation, because he's not going anywhere. and he'll be there and make your parenthood something that is successful on a human level and spiritually fruitful for eternal life.
Amen. I love the message. This has been an honor for me. I got to say, Frank Pavone, you're a first-class father all the way. And thank you so much for giving me a few minutes of your time here on First Class Fatherhood.
Thanks, Alec. God bless you.